Greetings. My name is Cesar Navarrete. I'm an assistant professor at St. Francis College in Brooklyn, New York, and I will be demonstrating the reading of this article titled STEM Ed Fostering Mathematical Creative Thinking Ability in the 21st Century. And you will notice that found at the top of the page, you can see that the paper is clearly labeled a paper open access, and that the way you know that is an open access publication. Now, right below the title, you will see the link that navigate to the paper link where you can download the paper itself. You will also notice at the top of the following page of the paper that it is published by the Journal of Physics conference series. And the conference series means that it's not necessarily a peer-reviewed research journal article, and it might not have the weight that other peer-reviewed articles might have. This paper was published in 2020, and it is relatively new publication, which might be important in technology research, in which the currency of the work is very important. Now, one of the important things about reading research articles is connecting to them to other research articles so that you may write your own paper or substantiate your own literature review. I'm in the Department of Education, which uses the APA, American Psychological Association, citation style format. However, you will notice that this paper is in Vancouver style or style similar to Vancouver style. There's some variations. And it's common in STEM and engineering research, and is common to other areas that are related to the sciences. Thus, you will have to read papers that are not necessarily in the style that you're accustomed to reading. One of the noticeable features of this article, they don't have the names of the authors in the citation, and thus you will have to go to the references to be able to figure out who wrote these articles. Another thing is that this style starts from the first citation is numbered number one, and then it numbered sequentially, so it's not in alphabetical order. When I read research paper like this, the first thing that I will look at, of course, is the title for its relevance to the study that I am conducting or the research that I may be proposing. I have to look closely at the title and see if it aligns with what I'm trying to the research that I'm trying to conduct or the literature review that I'm building. Once I understand that this might be within the scope of my work, because not everything's going to be directly related to your work, you will have to find papers that are peripheral to that work. And in this case, I'm looking at mathematical skills and also looking at creative thinking as the main topics. The next thing I will look at when I'm reading uh, one of these papers is the abstract. And you can see that I've highlighted some parts of it in green. So in this case, I'm looking at this paper closely to understand how creative thinking fits into my own research. And in this case, we're looking at STEM applications with ethnomathematics. The important point of this paper is creative thinking in mathematics, which is what I have been looking for, although there are different strands in this area. I can see in this study that this study was conducted in Indonesia with junior high students. So I will be looking to see what kind of study this is. Although I am involved with pre-service teacher education, this might be of interest because it involves classroom settings and STEM learning. I see that this is a quantitative study because they use ANOVA that is highlighted there in the paper, and uh, and then they have relatively large sample size with 300 students that might show significance within associated power. One of the other important things to look at below the abstract are the key words. And you can see that these are the ones that are going to be associated with some of the other strands of research that are related with your studies. For example, creative thinking is core to some of the research that I do. And although I do not do STEM research precisely, I'm involved in an area of problem solving and computational thinking, which might be related. I can see from the abstract that there was an ANOVA test done, it's highlighted there, and that 5% significance where there were three groups in which STEM learning models and the model core was 74.71 and the regular STEM class scored was 72.10. And then there was a control class that scored lower at 67.88. Although this information tells me that there were changes or improvement in the scores, it doesn't tell me a lot more than just the numbers, and it doesn't tell me the significance or even the test that it was involved necessarily. That is the intervention. After I've read the abstract and the key words, I will skip ahead into the discussion section that will give me connection to my research interests and relevance to my study. The reason I do this is because I need to save time, so I need to go directly to the results. And in this paper, the results section, number 3, the researchers claim that the data and creative thinking abilities in the experimental class and the control class are shown, and you will notice that on table 1, there was a description of the results of the pre-test and post-test, which is common on these kind of papers. And this is on the creative thinking abilities, and it gives us just numbers to compare. However, the information is still limited at this point. As I read further, the authors claim that the pretest and post-test of each class was different as shown in the bar graph in figure 4. In reading of the bar graph, you will notice that the control, which is in yellow, is lower than the other bar graphs, so that they are demonstrating that the STEM, regular STEM class and the STEM E ethnographic class are superior to the control results. As you read further down in figure 4, we notice that the data indicates that there was indeed a significant increase in student creative thinking abilities at the implementation of the STEM E in the experimental class 1. The STEM model in the experiment of class 2 and the course of the model and in the control class. When we look at the normality test results and table 2, we see that they show the Smirnov test and the Shapiro-Wilks test, and those are duplicate tests that are run, and therefore you can choose which one you want to run. And therefore, I will only concentrate on one for my purposes. In this case, I will look only at the Gorov-Smirnov version, and which shows the significance at 0.055 for the STEM class. The STEM E class shows a 0.109 and significance in the control class at 0.0. This table shows two different tests, but the different tests are not important to my study, so I will gloss over the rest of this information. You will notice that after table 3 at the bottom of the paragraph, it gives you the hypothesis, claiming that the null hypothesis shows no significance difference between the three different levels of intervention. The STEMI, and the control are supposed to be equal, and therefore there's no detectable change, and this is shown in table 4. The hypothetical test results are shown with the power of F observed and the F critical, demonstrating that the power of the intervention itself was great, and with a 59.03 and much more than the critical value needed at 3.15, showing that the null hypothesis is rejected and significance is found in the resulting test. Now, reading on the following chapter, after table 4, we look to see that the authors claim that one-way ANOVA shows that there's an improvement of creative thinking ability through the STEM-E model, and as further explains the table. Therefore, the authors claim that the post-test results show that the STEM-E model has an effect on student creative thinking ability compared to the STEM approach learning model and the non-STEM learning model. Therefore, the authors claim that in this section that the use of STEM-E is appropriate to improve creative thinking ability as shown here. And importantly, the authors claim that the students can be guided to solve everyday problems by using technology and combining mathematical thinking patterns and techniques that will bring in new ideas. Now, in this section, authors claim that based on the student mathematical creative thinking ability through the STEM E model, the process begins by observing questions given by the teacher and gathering facts from various sources, seeking new ideas, and innovating to conduct ethnomathematics. This continues in the discussion. The authors further claim that the mathematic creative thinking ability in the STEM E model is increased through the stage of creativity in connection to society and the implications of culture and ethnographic elements that are important to the learning model. The authors claim that the findings in this paper are supported by the studies numbered 48, 88, and 89. The authors go on to describe the STEM model, in which a teacher provides initial treatment to the students as an introduction that will trigger the emergence of students' creative abilities. This concept is supported by papers 65, 90, and 91, and we will look at those in the reference section. Continuing in this section, the authors also argued the ME learning can increase sensitivity to real-world problems and make students able to provide various answers to solutions and justifications for various phenomenon within the context of everyday life related to creative thinking abilities. In determining the usability of this paper, this is the reason why I go to the discussion section in order to help me understand the relevance to my own studies. The implications here are that ethno-STEM work involves contextualization of STEM learning within the student's lived-in world, which is relevant to what I look at in my own studies. In reading further, the authors claim that within that STEM e-learning, there are stages of forming ideas and creativity using ethnomathematics content, and they point to the analysis of the questions given by the teacher, gathering facts from other students, and then to discuss them for finding solutions to the given problems. Authors here further argue that STEM e-learning is better and influence students' creative thinking than regular STEM learning and superior to the normal school curriculum learning. In further reading of the section, we see that the authors claim that getting new ideas, creativity, and innovation to students in accordance with the students' abilities as a result of learning mathematics in class can provide optimal results and are consistent with references cited as 68, 79, 81, 83, 91, and 94. Now, in this section, I see that the authors substantiated the results by connecting to other research and claiming that STEME provides intensive treatment for students to the effect of increasing students' creative thinking, in which students can implement these new ideas and various solutions to solve problems. You will notice that I have not read this paper in a linear fashion. There are many papers out there, and therefore you must economize on your time. It is important to read through these papers quickly so that they could not waste time reading papers that might not be pertinent to what you are trying to find in your own literature review or studies. This paper, I have determined, is germane to some of the work that I do. However, I have to go back and determine how closely it aligns with my work and if I can use it in my own literature review for a paper that I'm writing. If I've determined that the paper is good to go, I'll return to the top of the paper and begin to read again through the title and through this section. And now I look at the introduction in section 1. I read the first line and shows it's a relationship between mathematics and real life phenomenon in the 21st century that involves creative thinking, and of course cites studies 1 through 3, which are at the very beginning. And we will look at those later. In this section, the author's goal on an explanation of nature of creative thinking, as well as the application in the real world setting and its connection to mathematics. And continue to read the study, I glance over some of the information, like the graphics of the South Asian nations. You can see at the top right here on top right. Um, and the mathematical ability within these countries, and the ability which compares various nations by their student mathematical abilities. This might not be of interest to my paper, but certainly it adds to my understanding of where this paper is going. Now, in section 2, which is the research methodology, this section provides the information on the overall structure of the study. This section should inform you on the who, what, and when of the study. For example, one of the important details of this is that it's a quasi-experimental study with 300 junior high students in Indonesia, and it tells me the years in which the study was conducted. The setting is described as 2 of the classes were randomly selected as an experimental group and the other from the control group. And there were 32 students in the experiment group 1, 30 students in the experimental group 2, while 32 students in the control group. Therefore, it alludes to somewhat a randomization, which adds power to your study. Then I will scan through the paper and review the graphics. You will see creative thinking indicators, which describe the constructs around creative thinking, usually includes fluency, flexibility, originality, elaboration. On this figure, you see the process of STEM e-learning, which are used in this experimental intervention with middle school students. Students are involved in the process of observation, generating new ideas, then innovating, being creative within the context of society, which is reduced to ethnomathematics. You will know that this paper has only 4 main sections, and we've already read number 3, and number 4 is the conclusions, which is rather small, and suggestions. But at this point, I will go back and start to look at some of the references. I will point out that one of the important things about reading research papers is the reference section itself, because even if the paper that you are reading might not be directly relevant to your study, you will find a treasure trove of research articles that might be directly related to your study. So in the bottom right here, you will see that I have references, and I'll look closely at number 1, 2, and 3, which were cited at the very beginning. And they may be highly relevant to this research area. In this reference section, you will notice that citation 1, 2, and 3 include the role of scientific terminology and metaphors in management education. Also, you see the metaphors of Turkish, Bulgarian, Romanian student in STEM discipline areas, and study 3 is the path of friction and toning societies, identities, and in nature in 21st century Iceland. 48, 88, and 89, I'm going through the reference section. I'll scroll down to the citations that the authors connect to the results of their study, namely it was 48, 88, and 89. The study number 8 by Ross and Ore, it was in 2018, and it was a study on STEM education in the Brazilian context with used ethno-mathematical perspective. This paper might be relevant to my own research. I scroll down to number 88, as you see to the right, and then to the lower right, and you see that this was by Moss and Arisa and Goose. And this is the role of mathematics interdisciplinary STEM education. And then one more down, number 89, by Rule and Atwood, Blaine Edwards and Gordon in 2016, art integration through making dioramas of women. Mathematical lives enhance creativity and motivation. In summarizing this presentation, I have demonstrated how I do not read these papers linearly, but very much holistically. The reason for this is that my time is limited, and there are so many papers out there that I could possibly read to inform my own research interests. However, we need to economize on our time and efforts so that we can get through all these papers and be able to select only the ones that will be relevant to our own studies. After I've done similar scan through several papers, then I can go back and select the papers that will be more pertinent for my work and read them more closely in details in the introduction, the methodology, as well as the results and conclusions of the papers. Recapping the scanning approach, first, I read the title, and to see that if it fits to my own interest, then I will read the abstract to see if it is indeed, if it indeed addresses any of the kinds of ideas that might be related to my own work. Then I will skip ahead to the discussion section, because that is where it will tell me the relevance to the world of education, in particular my area, and how it fits to the wider world of educational research. So I hope this has been useful to you in understanding as an approach and how to read papers, go through papers quickly to analyze them and understand how you can use them in your own work. Thank you and goodbye.